Hey, thank you for having me, though, Gene, and I'm glad to be here. Um, I really just want to talk today, and I want to get through what I want to share as quickly as possible so we can just discuss as a group. But I wanted to talk about AI and human collaboration, as you know. And let me point an initial big point out about the history of why we invent and innovate and create things. We build devices as humans to do things better than we can do them, or sometimes things we can't do at all. For example, we look at where we needed more strength. Well, there was the lever, then there was steam power and steam shovels, and that migrated to internal combustion engines and pumps and hydraulics. And now we have these massive machines that can do incredible feats of strength. But we've also done things over history like work reduction, creating the wheel and training animals to pull wagons, calculation speed. We went from the abacus to the calculator, and the slide rule was somewhere in between there. But then there's been analytical leverage, geometry, algebra, linear algebra, and then there's been speed, everywhere from animal training to internal combustion engines, pushing cars to flight. So think about this. With each of these advancements, we were happy. But now, fueled by Hollywood's imaginative stories, which I do enjoy, once we see math machines running on computers that think faster and more broadly than we can with language, we then become scared. However, remember, our ingenuity was the foundation of all great inventions of the past. So the idea that a machine can now think better than us is a bit humbling. Now, I wouldn't say completely better, but definitely oftentimes better and broader and faster. So, but do the machines, these math machines, really outthink us in all areas? Well, what are the most important elements of our thoughts? Our imaginations and our ingenuity. And those are the foundation of AI. So AIs exist due to human imagination and human creativity. AIs cannot imagine. AIs cannot create themselves, at least yet. Now, some of you will argue, and rightly so, about the unique solutions that RL-based AIs have developed, such as in chess and Go strategies. Yes, and those are great, but that is thinking more broadly and quickly than we can within a certain realm that the AI has been trained in. That's thinking speed and thinking weight in a way. But AIs do not yet have imaginations. They do not yet design complex systems such as other AIs. So, despite GPT-3's claims about itself, it's not self-aware. However, even if it was, let's remember, humans made it, and more importantly, trained it. Now let's back up a minute and agree on something. I think we all would agree with this. Data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence, reinforced learning, deep learning, they're all very cool. And deep learning would include transformers like GPT-3. But I believe that they're only a beginning. But will we achieve something like general AI? That is an AI that is human-like in thinking, but able to think much more fast and much more broadly. Well, I want y'all to first consider reinforced learning and GPTs, or general preform transformers. I mean, I think there's a 4 now, and it probably won't be long before there's a 5. I personally see the first step toward general AI as that is, if we could ever get to it, as an integration of reinforced learning and transformers. I mean, just as a first step. And these are huge math machines, but we would have to overcome the notoriously difficult training of reinforced learning systems. And then we'd have to find a way to train reinforced learning systems that are based on a host of integrated transformers. And I can hear some of you already, hey, those transformers can be pre-trained. And then the RL only needs to train the integration of those transformers. And you know what? I agree, but this is still very hard. And here's the biggest hurdle. And if anyone is doing breakthrough thinking here, I would be eager to learn about it. We have not yet begun to even ask the right questions about how to reach general AI. I'm not even sure that we've asked the right questions about what is different between humans and AI. And I'm not even sure we've answered what it means to be human. When I stop to think about that, not that my thinking is greater than anyone else's, it's challenging. So if we can begin to pose the right questions, then we might be able to begin to approach general AI. But until then, we're simply slinging opinions around. Because with good questions, we can then begin to explore answers that might get us to general AI. Until then, consider this. Humans created AIs, and AIs rely on us for everything, their existence, that is their hardware and the power needed to run that hardware, their training data, their advanced training, such as transfer training of pre-trained transformers, and so that they can grow in their skill sets. Their growth related to that previous point, but also growth in better hardware. And then if you think of a given AI's current boundaries, that is a current AI system, if you consider their current boundaries, and there are many boundaries of what clever humans have not yet overcome. Well, let me back up and say this differently. A given AI's boundaries are the many boundaries of what clever humans haven't yet figured out how to overcome. But those barriers, those boundaries are falling daily in the wake of many old boundaries that have been knocked down. By who? By humans. So how are we still unique and valuable compared to AIs or thinking machines? Well, think with me carefully here and really put on your imagination caps here. We as humans can go into a lab or out into any realm of this world where we can exist or send instrumentation into and experiment and create new data and new concepts from the logical inferences from that data to integrate into the thinking math machines. The AIs can't do this on their own. They only work within the realm of their current training, and they do that very good, thank God. So a general AI would at least need to be able to autonomously explore, experiment, and develop new concepts from those experimental findings. So humans, though, can develop new concepts and integrate new concepts from those many brilliant concepts. And they can be aided by AI while they do that. But AIs use our concepts from the words that humans have written. They're not, yes, they can spin new articles, but only in the realm of the data they've been given. Now, I'm not saying that we cannot get to AGI, but I can say we need to start asking questions about it, what it means to be general AI, and be humble enough to make this set of questions a living set of growing and improving questions. For now, I really have one fear about AIs. Otherwise, I want to collaborate with AIs as much as possible. And here is those set of fears. What are humans using them for? How are they using them? And governments around the world differ on how to regulate the ownership and use of powerful things. But AI is much more powerful. If the pen truly is mightier than the sword, how much more powerful is AI? So my fear of AI is who is using it and for what purposes. Let me give you a thought experiment. I want to ask you to be emotionally honest. You walk into a crowded room and you see a person across the room and you see them draw a very powerful pistol. Think about that. Now, why are they doing that? Are they doing it for good or evil? Whatever they're doing, there's power in their hand, and we just hope that power is used for good. People can secretly work on AIs from anywhere. It's my hope that the way we use AI will be for good and to collaborate with it for the good of humanity. And I know that was short, but it was intentional because I'd rather spend time discussing these points with you guys. So you can type in the chat, or I think Gene would be okay with you guys coming off mute too. And if we have bandwidth issues, I'll turn off my camera too.
You guys are free. You do have access to unmute yourself. Feel free to do that if you have any question. Let's make it a little bit debate. That's more of my understanding. And I do have one question, Thom. I think to me, AI might be a threat in the future. It may not be now because once AI have feelings, they can feel threatened. Human beings are the center. I wonder what would they do against human beings.
Well, I think it's important to consider what would be their motive. I don't think we can worry about the fear of what they would do if they were general, if they were human-like, because we're nowhere near that. It's more a question of who's going to use them and for what. Now, I'm not aware of any nefarious use of AI, but do you think anyone using AI nefariously is going to make it well known what they're using it for? That's what I'm saying. And it can be very hard to detect when you're reading an article from an AI and a human. So I think while I'm not belittling your question at all, Gene, I think it's a question of we're so far from that being a fear point. What are the more immediate fear points about AI? And to me, it's what I posed. Yep, they're an item of power, so will that power be used appropriately? And by the way, I'm not suggesting that I would be a great governor of how AI is used appropriately. I'm suggesting that anyone could use it inappropriately. As you know, social media is transforming the way we act and interact as a society. Is it all for good? Are the things that are going wrong with that intentional? Are they being addressed adequately? These are questions that no one can really answer fully. They can investigate, but I don't think anyone has a complete answer to those questions. So when we get to an AI that you can communicate with, like GPT-3, wow. Now, can you do it real time? No, but there's a guy that did a great YouTube video on a conversation with GPT-3. However, he took all the text responses and put it with GPT-3's human avatar and created a video of GPT-3 talking to him. Now, he post-processed it all, but it's a very compelling interview face-to-face with GPT-3's avatar. Now, GPT-3 is not doing that real time yet with the avatar, but I think it's just a matter of time before it is. It's a lot of post-processing to get it that way, in other words. So what are your thoughts, guys? And Gene, any other thoughts? I'm not sure the way I presented this is a popular line of thought. And I want to confess to you guys that have shown up, I don't think I've always made this extremely clear. The first time I said something like, AI is in a box. And a dear friend of mine immediately countered, no, it's not. It's growing rapidly. And I went, oh, shoot, I really misspoke that. What I mean is a given AI system is in a box. It's limited by the training we've given it. It can't go out and gather new data on its own. And that was one of the big points in this talk. But I need to be willing to refine this presentation based on other people's hard questions to me, because I'm still thinking through this stuff. Philip, I see you're off mute. Yeah.
Yeah, like you are saying, AI doesn't think outside the box. The way I think about it, I think about the car Tesla. I think intelligence, like human intelligence, would mean to think about something that nobody programmed you to think about. So the car Tesla can only think about the variables that we programmed it to think about. So if the people who programmed Tesla not to consider the variable snow, snow causes friction. Snow causes lack of a friction, so the tires would lose traction. I don't think Tesla or the AI can figure out on its own that snow will decrease the traction. So unless if we have told it somehow through the code, then it will never think outside the box. But the human being can think outside the box, even if nobody ever told you that some variable while driving the car might affect the driving. You might be able to think about it on your own without being pre-programmed about it. So,
That's a great point. I want to just, I'm not sure if I said it the way you said it or you said it differently from the way I said it, but what I should say is a given AI system is in a box within the training it's been given. However, that box can be huge, and the AI can think around the realm of that data much faster and more broadly than we can. However, it can't increase the limits of that box on its own, but that box can be huge. For example, that's why RL-based AI systems can do so well on chess and AlphaGo and games like that. They come up with unique solutions, but it's still within the realm of that game. Now try to take that AI out into other realms on its own. That would be human-like, to be able to walk away from the game and go gather more data and make more inferences as you're moving through the environment. It's constrained to that one environment, chess or AlphaGo. But great points. I think with Tesla, what's great is it's feeding the sensor data very rapidly to the AI in their cars and adjusting the car's traction control very rapidly. So to me, that's a big win. That's a great collaboration between AI and humans.
and when you said you make the box bigger, like you connect it to other things, I think that would be called Internet of Things, isn't it? I'm not sure.
Oh, Internet of Things is really a spirit of taking sensors and other devices that collect data and making them accessible over the internet, is my understanding. I may not have posed that perfectly, but that's my understanding of it.
Yeah, yeah, but I think intelligence basically means thinking about something that nobody ever told you about. The computers and the AI, they will never do that, I think. They have to be told either by the programmer himself or by, let's say, another sensor of maybe another company, like the other car company. I think it's called Lucid. Maybe share data, and somehow one company tells the other. But yeah, I think humans can think without being told to, but computers, I think they will never be able to. I don't know how the biological brain works. I understand how the computers is just a lot of silicon chips, so it's just a switch, either on or off. But they are like trillions of switches. Every group of them, if they are in a certain like pattern, on, off, on, like this, it would mean something. But the biological brain, we don't exactly know how it works, so it's difficult to compare between the two.
Yes, we don't design hardware that is like our brains. We design software that's like our brains. And even then, it's just a crude approximation because I agree with you. We don't fully understand what the processes from neuron to neuron are in the brain. We do have a pretty decent high level idea of it. But I think the neuroscientists are still digging deeper and deeper to try to understand things better. It's quite amazing. It's all quite fragile either way. Hang on a minute. Sorry, my family. They sometimes forget I'm on a call. Philip, great questions. Anyone else, thoughts or questions? And please, I want y'all to not be shy to disagree with anything I've said. I'm eager to find errors in this thinking. I've been thinking, Dennis Rothman and I tend to agree on points like this, but I haven't run all of this by him yet, even. And he's a dear friend that likes to think about these areas too. Gene, any other thoughts?
Just something I want to ask you. Do you think over time they may find a formula that would allow AI to think?
Well, I'm beginning to think that, boy, it's a big question. Again, the questions, right? Even though humans are constantly breaking down barriers between where we are now and the next great step in AI. We are doing that, as the clever humans are doing that, through a combination of hardware, clever programming, and very innovative thinking about how to train these better and faster with less resources. Now, this is a long-winded answer, Gene, but for example, you take GPT-3 and you give it a task without any transfer training. Now you take a transformer that's maybe 1/3 the order of magnitude and parameters, or maybe even 1/4, or in other words, 1,000 to 10,000 times smaller, but it's still a transformer, and you train it on domain-specific knowledge. Well, that particular transformer could be trained on a decent laptop with a really powerful GPU in a reasonable amount of time and outperform GPT-3, but only on that specific domain, that specific area, where GPT-3 is powerful as its generalization. So I frequently imagine and discuss this with my friends that I like to think about business ideas with. What we need is an RL that can appropriately integrate a bunch of pre-trained transformers to take the next step in a more general math machine that can outthink us in many domains. And when I say outthink us, I just mean within the realm of current knowledge, right? In other words, they can leverage the data they have faster and more broadly than we can. They can do summary research on a topic faster than we can, for example. They can highlight things in an image much faster than we can. So it's that kind of spirit. But then let's remember, we created them. There are our tools. What do we do with tools that we make? We exploit them. We use them. And I think it's fine to talk about exploiting AI systems because they're our creations and they don't mind. They don't have feelings yet to where they could object to say, I don't want to be used this way. I mean, I'm being a little facetious here, but the point being, we pick up a shovel to dig a hole. The shovel never complains, nor will the AI. So I'm using exploit in the pro-human way. I hope that helped answer your question a little bit, Gene. But even getting to where we had a host of transformers that were integrated by some reinforced learning system, I'm not sure we're able to train that yet, but I bet some clever human, and I hope it's me, could get to that point. Any other thoughts or questions? Oh, okay, good.
Great answer.
Yeah, any other thoughts on that, though? I'd be welcome to hear anyone that just, oh, sorry, Gene, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I was about to to call out some name. Matt, would you like to say something? Marcus and Vinny? You guys do have access to unmute yourself.
Or you can put it thoughts in the chat.
If you have to, for example, how can we best leverage AI? Because right now, if you're looking at things, I think there's about 30 to 40% of what human beings used to do will fall under AI responsibility. For our next generation, what would you suggest them to do?
That's a great question. There's probably multiple things. This is related to a talk that Greg Kikuyo and I like to give together called return. It's the main point of it is return on data. And it's a spirit of taking what the needs are in a given realm. Let's say it's a business, but let's say it's humanity. Let's list out all the greatest needs we have. And then let's do another thing. Let's look at the data related to those needs. Well, let's say, for example, the first and second greatest needs don't have enough data for AI to be trained on it yet. But the third greatest need just happens to have a lot of data. And it might take a lot of pre-processing, but we can get that data to a state where we can train that AI to help us. Well, that's the best intersection right now. But it doesn't mean we don't care about those first and second priorities. It means we start to undertake some large data collection activities so that we can create AIs to help us with those two areas. So we look for the best intersections to get an idea of what we can do right away. And we look for the weak intersections to know what data do I need to collect. In other words, what's the priority of my data collection, my data gathering? A simple system by which to, decide what order we go after helping humanity with AI.
Thanks, Thom.
Oh, Philip, you have your hand up still, or did you?
Oh, I think I forgot it.
No worries, no worries.
Okay, I just lowered it. Yeah.
Now, I want to ask y'all, this is a bit of a thought question, a thought experiment. Where does the fear of general AI come from? Because I'm proposing it's like you're afraid of something that likely won't happen in the next 100 years. But where does the fear of general AI come from? And why are people not more afraid of AI in the way I proposed it, being in the hands of nefarious humans? That is, humans that only wish to use it to get more for themselves at the expense of others. Where does that fear of general AI, why is it larger than the misuse of current AI abilities? Do y'all have any thoughts on that?
I just want to make sure I understand the question. You are saying why there is no fear from general AI?
Why it seems to me that the fear of general AI is larger than the fear of current AI used for bad purposes.
Why the fear for general AI seems to be more than the fear for the current AI?
Yeah, I feel like that's the case. Maybe I'm wrong, but when I hear people talking about fears of AI, it seems to be in that way. I do have a, oh, please go, Gene.
Sorry about that, Matt.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think to kind of go off that question, I'm just thinking about some of my friends who aren't necessarily, I guess, tech savvy. I think it's just a lack of knowledge in that space, because when they're worried about AI, it's just probably whatever they've seen in movies or whatever they've heard in the media or something like that. They make it out to be this big bad guy, and it's just, I think, like I said, it just really stems from a lack of knowledge of what its capabilities are. Because to your point, a lot of the fears aren't even the capabilities of AI aren't even there. So it's like there's a fear of nothing really.
Yeah, I like the way you're putting that. And it seems to me that it's related to, how do I put this? I like the way you added people that I put it in the chat, lack of knowledge. Um, it's a reality that people will become fearful of things that have been posed in the arts, like Hollywood. And by the way, I think these scenarios of an AGI taking over, they make for a wonderful action movie plot, but they're not reality. Um, by the way, I watched all of Person of Interest and loved it. And it was a series on Netflix, I believe. I think it was on Netflix, but it was about this very smart, eccentric billionaire that created an AI, and it was exceptional. And then a friend of his created a different AI, and those two AIs ended up battling each other because they had different agendas. And the humans that were their caretakers, were involved too. But I think it's fueled by Hollywood and ignorance. Those that know, it seems to me that they would be more afraid of how current AI could be misused. Barry, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think I agree with you, but from what I've read and seen, I think from a socio-political point of view, there are certain regions in the world who have a fear of AGI. It is quite possible that some governments can use AGI in sort of classifying the population in different ways using different parameters. We've seen China make some great strides in this area. They introduce a sort of a human credit system, right, where you give people certain credit scores, and that also together with facial recognition, people walking on the street, the places covered with cameras, and when these machines seem to get very intelligent to recognize people and behavior of people, the machines sort of learn enough to take it upon themselves to determine the score of a person, and then the score of a person would determine should this person have certain amenities that are granted to the general public, or should it be restricted. So I from that point of view, I think people are a bit worried about it. Um, so, but from a strictly computing point of view, I think it adds a lot of benefit. As your presentation, you can learn both ways. Machines can learn, humans can learn. There's that collaboration. So that's the point of view I wanted to bring across.
No, that's great. I really appreciate you sharing that. And I'd like to attempt to summarize your excellent points this way. It's easy to become afraid when it's so hard to investigate the real state of things. For example, we see how powerful current AIs are. They're really good, but we don't know the breadth of what's actually being done with them. In fact, I doubt any one person knows the entire breadth of the way they're being used right now. But the thing that's thrown into our faces probably the most frequently, because we all like to watch movies, is these general AIs, running amok sometimes. And I've seen general AIs in movies make better decisions than humans. In other words, they pose them both ways, as both taking over in ways we wouldn't want them to, and caring more about us than we care about ourselves sometimes. So we see a wide spectrum, but it's still that very much like that. There's guns out there. They're powerful. They're lethal. But are they going to be used for good or bad? Now, a thought here. This is just one of the thoughts out there. You make gun ownership illegal. Now, let's say you make AI ownership illegal. Just this a little bit of synonymous nature here. Well, now I'm not allowed to use a gun to defend myself. I mean, some person that is willing to break the law will get a gun and use it for bad purposes. And if they happen to come after me and I don't have a gun, I can't defend myself. And the law, the police, the military can't be everywhere all the time. Well, it sounds like anarchy, but hopefully there's people using AI to find and defend themselves against current AIs that are not used in a good way. But Barry, thank you. Great point. I hope, Barry, did I even come close to kind of summarizing and leveraging from your comments? I hope I did.
Oh yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, I definitely see your point of view. It's such a broad, it's so many broad perspectives. But I think we have to provide some focus on it if we're gonna really make it useful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Any other thoughts, guys? I have a question. Actually, I have two questions for you guys. Have you thought about what questions we need to pose to make the next steps to general AI? And do you have a system other than the one I proposed that would take us the next step closer to general AI. By the way, I think it's a worthy goal. It would be, we've created all these other amazing devices throughout history to help us do more with less. And I see trying to approach general AI as the same thing, to help us live better lives. But is there one or more questions you have that we need to answer to get to the next steps? Or do you have a system that you would propose that's worthy of experimenting with to take us to the next step? Have you all imagined those things? Or did you like the one I proposed, which is the pre-trained transformers being integrated by some other math machine that's trained by reinforced learning architecture?
I think
Going ahead. Yeah.
I think the question that we have to make AI answer is which other variables we have to consider when we make any decision, and how much weight does each variable have. I heard there was an article like in the future they want to replace judges by AI, which I don't know. Like the purpose of AI is to decrease like certain biases. The human being, they might have some bias like in the back of their mind, even if they can't control it, but the computer can avoid it. But in that case, like I don't know, how does the AI know which variables they have to use? The discretion, I mean, humans have discretion, but AI should help us figure out which variables we have to consider and how much each variable weighs.
I would like to ask y'all a related question because I think this was a perfect segue to another area of important thought regarding AI. Do you guys consider the judicial system an area of science?
Science means less discretion, right? Science means more objectivity and less subjectivity. Is that the difference between science and art?
I would tend to agree with that. I never really thought to put it that way, but I think to me, the scientific method at a very high level is about gathering evidence, and data is a form of evidence, and making logical inferences from it. And then sometimes you also make a logical inference from a combination of other logical inferences and data. So to me, that's what science is. And I do consider the judicial system an area of science. But I like that you brought this up, Philip, because what muddies the law more than any other component of the law? It's humans. The lady justice who's holding up the scales in the front of many courtrooms of our country, she rightly wears a blindfold.
Yeah, they should be like this.
Yeah. And, we've gotten better and better with the use of evidence, physical evidence, but it's quite amazing. That would be tricky, but I think it is conceivable. Boy, it'd be a huge transformer, though, wouldn't it, Philip? Trained on all of legal history. It could be trained on all the court recordings and all the decisions and all the writings from the judges and all the notes from each side, and would the data be clean enough? Would it be accurate enough? But it would be a huge undertaking to train such an AI. But to see it objectively lay out a decision based on court history and based on current data. You know, the reason I don't, this is my feeling, and I'm open to anyone disagreeing with me. The reason we have juries is because the law does not perfectly account for every situation. But then we're filling that jury with humans that have fallible logic, and that's complicated. So if an AI could do it better, but you'd have to, I think it'd be better if the AI was on the jury and the jury listened to it carefully. In other words, this is AI and human collaboration. You know, maybe the first time, it's always a 13th juror, and they don't have to take its vote, but they're letting it counsel them. And then maybe the court system over time gains some confidence to say, we're going to let it be the 12th juror. And then over time, maybe it's no, we're going to have an equal number of AIs and humans, and they should collaborate. And maybe there's a jury foreman that's making sure they collaborate appropriately. I don't know. That's a great thought.
Yeah, I think, just to add to that, I think it's really difficult to take something that is intangible, like something like gut feeling, and give it a weight or an index, like what you normally do um, in history matching or that sort of thing. Because as you rightfully said, in the legal system, they go along with what has been set as precedents. So if in the past 20 years, some guy was hung because he murdered X amount of people, or were the people white, or were they black, or were they Latino, it's very difficult to see what is in an intangible state and give it a factor from 1 to 10, So it probably can definitely done if we have enough data, historical data, but I don't think it'll ever be socially acceptable by a large group of people. Because I mean, as the Constitution, we have the rights. We have a lot of rights that are given by us by the Constitution, which the legal system is supposed to follow. So it's a very complex situation when you have all these intangible factors involved.
That's very well put. Just so you know, Barry, that's why I proposed it the way I did. It starts out as a 13th jury member that doesn't get to vote but gets to speak. And then if there's confidence from its participation at that level, the judicial system could decide we're going to let it be a 12th juror. Then we're going to let it be an 11th and 12th juror, et cetera. But based on acceptance. And hopefully the adoption would be for good, accurate reasons, or the rejection of it would be for good, accurate reasons. Like, no, it's not ready yet, or wow, this thing really helped us stay objective in these jury proceedings. So, yeah. Well, guys, I'm sensing we're coming to a close. I've really enjoyed thinking through this with you. I hope you'll take my thoughts and add to them, refine them, correct them, because I'm not going to propose that what I presented is completely inerrant or completely logical. It's my best stab at how humans and AIs are different and how we can work better together. And in fact, in my current role at AI Strategy, that's how we're using AI, is in collaboration with humans. But it doesn't have to be a very complicated AI. AI can be just automation and lookups. So it's not always, you know, some hardcore math machine, and it's inside the code. Thank you, Barry. I'm glad you felt so. Matt, appreciated your points. And I hope those of you that were quiet still got value out of this. We would have loved to hear from you, but I understand.